You are listening To a New You, a podcast about mental health and veterans issues. Today's topic I want to talk about is rumination. Some of you who are listening right now may know what rumination is, and others may not. So, hopefully, by the end of this episode, those who do not know what rumination is will know a little bit more about what it is. I do have a Facebook page for this podcast as well. It's called The Path to New You. If you could find it and like it, I'd appreciate that. But first of all, what is rumination? The definition of rumination involves repetitive thinking or dwelling on negative feelings and distress and their causes and consequences. The repetitive negative aspect of rumination can contribute to the development of depression or anxiety and can worsen existing conditions. Let me repeat that again. Rumination involves repetitive thinking or dwelling on negative feelings and distress and their causes and consequences. So it's repetitive thinking, usually negative thinking. The repetitive negative aspect of rumination can contribute to the development of depression or anxiety and can worsen existing conditions. So if you continue with the thoughts, repetitive thinking of negative thoughts, of course you're gonna get extremely depressed, anxious, and among other things. So if you already have an anxiety condition, if you're already anxious, you're gonna even get more anxious with rumination. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what it is and also treatment options. There's a few things you can do on your own, as well as things you can do to help yourself by like seeing a therapist. So I'm just gonna this that's today's topic. I hope you I hope you learned something from today. If you don't know what rumination is. So like I said earlier, rumination is like a treadmill for the mind. It feels like an endless loop of repetitive thoughts and worries. Getting out of the loop can be much more difficult than, let's say, getting. So, getting out of the loop can be really difficult, especially if you continue to ruminate. With the right strategies and support, it is possible to unhook or detach those ruminating thoughts. So, with the actual support, with the right support and strategies and all that, it's possible to unhook those thoughts, ruminating thoughts. Nation consistent dwelling on negative thoughts, like I just mentioned, and experiences that they escape. Those feelings and those events are something that are just future scenarios, also future stuff like scenarios in the future, like this is going to happen. What can I do? This is going to be really bad. Kind of like negative thinking, stuff like that. So it's all everything like about rumination is that negative feeling. Like I said earlier, it can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and even depression, as it amplifies our negative feelings and prevents us from focusing on the present moment. So you're either thinking about the past or the future, and it's all negative thoughts about the past or the future. So you continuing to have those thoughts. One of the first things you can do to break that cycle is to become aware of when it occurs. So your thoughts, you're ruminating, one of the first things to do to break that cycle is become aware of like when it occurs. Pay attention to your thought patterns and notice when you find yourself dwelling on the same thoughts repeatedly. Since triggers often start through painful lived experiences that shape our understanding of ourselves and the world, it's also important to recognize which ones set off the cycle, whether it's a particular situation, emotion, or even thought pattern. Now, there are some techniques, something you can do to stop rumination. One of the things that can be done is what's called, it's a type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy. A lot of therapists use this type of therapy. So, cognitive behavioral therapy is a widely recognized therapeutic approach for addressing rumination and other negative thought patterns. Through CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, individuals learn to identify and challenge irrational beliefs and cognitive distortions that contribute to rumination. CBT trained professionals teach clients strategies to unhook from ruminations by taking different perspectives, separating facts from judgments, and reframing negative assumptions into more realistic and positive ones. There's also um, DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. That's another common one, and that's what they use at Rogers Behavioral Health, where I worked at. So during groups, they use dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a different type, but common type of therapy that therapists use. Practice mindfulness through deep breathing exercises or simply paying attention to your senses in the moment. So, doing mindfulness definitely helps. Build mindfulness is to start with an activity you do daily, for example. So, mindfulness, being in the moment, something you do on a regular basis. You can be in that moment when you're doing that activity. Good example is most people do this at least once or twice a day is brushing your teeth. When you're brushing your teeth, practice with the task and it's entirely paying attention to what's going on in your mouth, the sensations in your mouth, the taste of your toothpaste in your mouth, in your tongue, and also your movement of your hand when you're removing the toothpaste, brushing your teeth. So every time you drift off in your thought to the act of brushing your teeth. So if you're brushing your teeth and all of a sudden you have these other thoughts in your mind, try to pull back into the moment where you're brushing your teeth. Now, now it takes practice to do that. Like just like everything else, everything takes practice. So you're not just gonna be able to do it like right away. We wish we can, but that's almost impossible. It takes time, it takes practice, just like everything else. Another one is engaging in meaningful activities. Another way to disrupt the cycle of rumination, engage in activities that bring you joy and fulfillment, like a hobby, something that brings you joy, like pursuing a hobby, volunteering, engaging in meaningful activities can shift your focus away from negative thoughts and towards positive experiences. So, rumination again is negative thoughts from your negative experiences in the past, and possibly something that could be in present. You could think about something in the future where it could be like something negative might happen. So, focusing your negative thoughts and put them towards positive experiences, like a hobby, volunteering. Also surround books. podcasts, or anything like that matter to, meaningful quotes also. Connecting with people throughout your community, like groups, that definitely helps as well. There's support groups out there. There's people who are in the same situation you are, who are also looking for support. So there are support groups out there. Support groups, as well as, let's say, those who share the same interests. There's an app called Meetup, where you can look, say, like your hobby, and you can look up on Meetup, and there might be like a meetup somewhere within your community of the same people with the same interests. So using that to get your mind off rumination. Just keep them busy. Just keep some way, find a way to keep yourself busy in a positive manner. Spending time in nature could be another one. Exercising. Exercise can improve mental health, especially over time. Distraction. There's other techniques too. There's just a few that definitely help. You can always find more things on Google. If you're to the point where you're extremely depressed, you just don't know where to go or how to get out of that loop, that ruminating loop of the negative thoughts, and you're just extremely depressed and you don't know where to go. Your next step would be to find a therapist. Reach out to a therapist. Now, there are resources out there. Um, you can Google therapy. Just Google therapists and say depression, ruminating, and the therapist in your location will pop up. Now, some of those therapists do have like a wait list, so keep that in mind. Find support. Like I said, there are support groups out there. Just taking your mind off the negative thoughts. Do a hobby. For example, my hobby, I enjoy baseball. Baseball is one of my favorite sports. What I do, I collect baseball cards. I I watch games on TV. I go to games. I go to concerts. I'm busy. I always stay busy. I know I've had problems too with ruminating negative thoughts and keep myself distracted. Definitely helps ease the negative thoughts. Also, and you're achieving it, celebrate your progress. Like, you know what? This is great. I'm doing it. Celebrate small victories along the way as you work to break the cycle of rumination. Acknowledge it and celebrate moments when you successfully redirect your thoughts away from ruminating on challenging negative beliefs. Recognize that change takes time and effort, like I mentioned. It doesn't happen overnight. Just like therapy, you're reaching out for help. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It's an investment. Therapy is an investment. Keep that in mind too. But eventually you get through it. I remember my experiences with the ruminating thoughts. It took me a long time, but eventually I, su- I seek treatment. I went to a therapist. I talked about it, and now I have improved quite a bit. Sometimes I still have those thoughts, ruminating thoughts, but most of the time I know how to redirect myself because that's what therapists do. They teach you coping skills, they teach you, give you resources so that can help you in the future. Something you're like, you know what, my therapist told me to do this. So let's do this. That could be anything. A coping skill. That's what coping skills are. Keep that in mind. It's a work in progress. It does not happen overnight, and it takes practice. Sometimes it takes longer than you may not take as long as I can't even speak. It may not take as long as for you to break that cycle than somebody else. It may take you longer than that other person. Keep that in mind. Breaking, like exercise, going outside, finding a group and that of people who do the same thing, who are in the same, have the same hobbies as you, all that stuff I mentioned, just reach out. Um, Also, friends, family members, just reach out to support when needed, and eventually you'll overcome the ruminating thoughts. Like I said, it takes practice, patience, persistence, and self compassion. Remember to celebrate the small victories as well. You celebrate by, I don't know, having a soda or something. Like, you know what? I was ruminating. Now I got out of it. So I'm going to do something that brings me happiness. Anything small, celebrate small victories. And eventually, like I said, it'll take time, but eventually you'll get through it. You'll overcome it. I hope you learned something today. Um, I'm hoping to find more guests for this show, for this podcast. That way I do less talking and you can actually learn a little bit more about any topic in the mental health field. I'm looking for someone who specializes in a certain topic. If you're interested, or you know someone who would be interested in being a guest on my podcast, please reach out. I'd appreciate it. Reach out. This podcast is available on most major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, and I might be forgetting one, but it's all most major platforms, and it's free to listen to as well. Also, I will post a link to my Path to Know You Facebook page. So if you could like and follow it, I'd appreciate it. I do post my links to my podcast on there, as well as mental health awareness, self self care tips, and just information on mental health. I'm trying to spread mental health awareness. I know it was like April or May or something is Mental Health Awareness Month, but I think every month should be a Mental Health Awareness Month. I know since the pandemic, more and more people have gone to see a therapist, have reached out for help. Um, Again, you are listening to A Path to New You. Have a good rest of the day and be well.